shadows of doubt. The glass elevator of Westbrook Financial ascended with mechanical precision, much like how Fiona Nichols had calibrated her life. Methodical, measured, and invisible when necessary. She adjusted her sensible navy blazer, purchased during a rare department store sale, and smoothed her auburn hair into its practical low bun. The reflection that stared back at her from the polished elevator doors showed a woman of 32 who had mastered the art of professional camouflage. "Hold the elevator!" A manicured hand slipped between the closing doors. Fiona instinctively pressed the door open button, allowing Veronica Ashcroft to glide in, trailing designer perfume and the unmistakable confidence that came with old money. "Thanks." Veronica barely glanced at Fiona, tapping at her phone. "Oh, Fiona, right? From accounting?" She pronounced it as if recalling a distant acquaintance rather than someone she'd worked alongside for 3 years. "That's right." Fiona offered a polite smile. "We're preparing for the quarterly review today." Veronica's attention had already drifted back to her screen. Exciting stuff." The sarcasm wasn't subtle. The elevator stopped at the 32nd floor, and Veronica stepped out with a casual, "See you at Penelope's engagement party this weekend?" Before Fiona could explain she hadn't received an invitation, the doors closed. She exhaled slowly. It wasn't the first time she'd been excluded from the social circles that formed the true power structure of Westbrook Financial. Growing up in Millfield, a forgotten industrial town 2 hours from the city, Fiona had learned early that some people were born into opportunity while others had to create their own. Her father, a factory worker with calloused hands and unwavering principles, had instilled in her the belief that integrity and hard work would eventually yield recognition. Her mother, a school secretary who crafted miracles from modest paychecks, had taught her that dignity couldn't be measured by a bank balance. Yet here, in the gleaming towers of financial power, those lessons sometimes felt naive. The elevator opened on the 35th floor, the accounting department. Fiona moved through the open office space toward her cubicle, exchanging quick greetings with colleagues who, like her, occupied the middle rungs of the corporate ladder. "Morning, Fee." Thomas Lee, her closest ally in the department, rolled his chair toward her desk. "Ready for the Hamilton audit?" Fiona set down her practical leather satchel, a graduation gift from her parents that she'd maintained meticulously. "As ready as I'll ever be. I've been reviewing their previous statements. All week." Thomas lowered his voice. "Word is, Penelope gave it to us because it's a potential disaster. The Golden Girl doesn't want her perfect record tarnished." Fiona wasn't surprised. Penelope Winters, daughter of the firm's second-largest shareholder and engaged to the son of A. the First, had a talent for redirecting challenging assignments to others while claiming the straightforward successes. "We'll handle it," Fiona said with quiet determination. "I found some inconsistencies in their tax filings that nobody caught last year." Thomas grinned. "This is why you're the best in the department, even if the brass doesn't see it." Morning. Team. Howard Griffin, their department head, approached with his characteristic brisk energy. "Change of plans, Fiona. The Hamilton audit is being reassigned." Fiona felt her stomach tighten. This happened too often. The projects she prepared for, the opportunities to demonstrate her skills, redirected at the last minute. "Instead," Howard continued, "you'll be handling Reeves Technologies." The office fell momentarily silent. Reeves Technologies was not just any client. Founded by Dominic Reeves, the notoriously demanding tech mogul, it had grown from a startup to a multi-billion-dollar empire in under a decade. "Their CFO specifically requested our best numbers person," Howard added, seemingly surprised by his own words. "Apparently they need someone who can see beyond standard practices." Fiona blinked, processing this unexpected turn. "Why me?" Howard shrugged. "Your analysis of the Mercer portfolio caught someone's attention. Meetings at 2. Their offices." As Howard walked away, whispers erupted around her. Dominic Reeves eats accountants for breakfast. Someone muttered. Thomas looked both impressed and concerned. This could be your breakout moment, Fee, or career suicide, Fiona finished, opening her laptop. Either way, I'm going to be prepared. What no one in the office knew was that Fiona had been studying Reeves Technologies for months, fascinated by their innovative financial structure. Perhaps being underestimated had its advantages after all. She'd had plenty of quiet time to pursue her own analyses while her colleagues networked at parties she wasn't invited to. For once, being considered a nobody might just be her greatest asset. Calculated risks. The headquarters of Reeves Technologies occupied a renovated industrial building in the city's emerging tech district. Unlike the sterile glass towers of the financial sector, this structure maintained its original brick exterior. While housing one of the most innovative companies in the world, Fiona gazed up at the imposing facade, her portfolio clutched against her chest like armor. Deep breath, she whispered to herself. A ritual before every important meeting. The security guard directed her to the executive floor after verifying. Her credentials, his expression neutral but not unwelcoming. The elevator doors opened to reveal an unexpected scene. Instead of the minimalist, chrome and glass aesthetic she'd anticipated, the executive floor resembled a collaborative workshop. Teams huddled around digital displays, animated conversations punctuated by bursts of laughter. No cubicles, no obvious hierarchy, just the controlled chaos of collective innovation. Ms. Nichols, a woman with close-cropped silver hair and striking amber eyes, approached. I'm Josephine Reed, Chief Operating Officer. Dominic is waiting in the conference room. Fiona followed Josephine through the vibrant workspace, noting how employees didn't lower their voices or straighten their postures as the COO passed, a stark contrast to the deferential hush that followed executives at Westbrook. Fair warning, Josephine said as they neared a glass-walled conference room. Dom's in one of his focused modes today. Don't take it personally if he seems abrupt. Before Fiona could respond, Josephine opened the door to reveal a man standing before a wall of digital projections, his back to them. Tall and lean, with dark hair showing premature silver at the temples, he manipulated the data displays with precise gestures. Dom, Fiona Nichols from Westbrook is here, Josephine announced. Dominic Reeves turned, and Fiona immediately understood why business magazines frequently featured his intense gaze. His eyes were a penetrating blue-gray that seemed to evaluate everything they encountered with algorithmic precision. Ms. Nichols. His voice was unexpectedly quiet. Your analysis of the Mercer portfolio showed uncommon insight. I'd like to see if you can do the same with our financial structure. He gestured to the chair beside him rather than maintaining the traditional executive subordinate seating arrangement. Fiona set her portfolio on the table. I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Reeves, though I'm curious why Reeves Technologies is seeking outside financial consultation. Your internal team is highly regarded. A flicker of approval crossed his face at her directness. Sometimes an outside perspective identifies patterns we're too close to see. We're preparing for an expansion that requires absolute financial clarity. For the next 2 hours, Fiona found herself in the most intellectually rigorous financial discussion of her career. Dominic didn't speak much, instead watching as she navigated through complex data sets, occasionally asking questions that cut to the heart of issues she was still formulating. You don't think linearly, he observed during a rare pause. You see financial patterns spatially. That's unusual. Fiona hesitated. At Westbrook, her unconventional approach to financial analysis was often criticized as unnecessarily complex. I find traditional financial modeling sometimes misses dimensional relationships between seemingly unrelated factors, she admitted. Dominic nodded, his intense focus softening slightly. That's exactly why you're here. Our expansion involves technologies with financial implications that don't fit standard models. Josephine, who had been quietly observing, interjected. What Dom isn't saying is that our financial team keeps producing perfectly logical projections that don't align with his intuition about where the market is heading. And intuition isn't bankable, Dominic added with unexpected self-awareness. The conference room door opened, and a man in an impeccably tailored suit entered. Sorry I'm late, he said, though his tone suggested the opposite. Traffic was murder. This is Preston Blackwood, our CFO, Josephine explained to Fiona. Preston barely acknowledged her, addressing Dominic directly. I've been reviewing the preliminary expansion numbers. I still think we're overextending. This is Fiona Nichols from Westbrook, Dominic said. She's been finding interesting patterns in our financial structure. Preston's gaze swept over Fiona, taking in her sensible clothing and practical appearance with poorly disguised dismissal. Westbrook? I thought we were bringing in someone from Goldman or McKinsey? Ms. Nichols has demonstrated exceptional analytical abilities, Dominic replied, his tone cooling perceptibly. Fiona recognized the dynamic immediately. She'd experienced it countless times at Westbrook. Preston represented the traditional financial establishment, with its networks of prestigious universities and country club connections. In his world, her background would always mark her as an outsider. I've actually been developing an alternative financial projection model, Fiona said, surprised by her own boldness. It incorporates market sentiment analysis alongside traditional metrics. Preston's expression was skeptical. Market sentiment is notoriously unreliable for long-term planning. Not if you understand the pattern recognition algorithms we've been developing, Dominic countered. Show me your model, Ms. Nichols. Fiona pulled up a series of projections she'd created after hours, work she'd never shown anyone at Westbrook for fear of ridicule. As she explained her methodology, she noticed Dominic's growing interest and Preston's increasing discomfort. This is precisely what I've been trying to articulate, Dominic said when she finished. Our expansion isn't just about capital deployment. It's about anticipating how technological integration will reshape market behavior. Preston cleared his throat. It's certainly creative, but untested. Then we'll test it, Dominic said, with finality. Ms. Nichols, I'd like you to work directly with our team on this expansion project. A 3-month secondment from Westbrook. Fiona blinked in surprise. That would be unusual. I'll speak with your management today, Dominic said, already typing on his tablet. Unless you have objections? Fiona thought of her cubicle at Westbrook, of Veronica's casual dismissals and Penelope's strategic undermining. She thought of projects reassigned and ideas overlooked. Then she looked at the complex data visualizations surrounding them, representing challenges that would stretch her abilities to their limits. No objections, she said firmly. I'd welcome the opportunity. As the meeting concluded, Josephine walked Fiona back toward the elevator. You've made quite an impression, she said. Dom doesn't typically respond to people so quickly. He seems very focused on results rather than credentials, Fiona observed. Josephine smiled knowingly. Dominic built this company from nothing. His family owned a failing electronics repair shop in a struggling neighborhood. Most investors wouldn't give him the time of day until his first breakthrough forced them to pay attention. She paused at the elevator. Perhaps he recognizes something familiar in you. The doors closed and Fiona descended toward the street, her mind racing with possibilities. For the first time in years, she felt the exhilarating sensation of being valued for her abilities rather than judged for her background. The calculated risk she'd taken in showing her unconventional model might change everything, though whether for better or worse remained to be seen. Beyond the balance sheet. 3 weeks into her secondment at Reeves Technologies, Fiona found herself working late again, though not from obligation as at Westbrook, but from genuine absorption in the challenge before her. The spacious office they'd assigned her with its wall of windows overlooking the city, still felt surreal after years in a cubicle. "You know normal people go home sometimes," came a voice from her doorway. Fiona looked up to find Dominic leaning against the frame, his usual formal attire replaced by a simple black t-shirt and jeans. In these moments, away from boardrooms and investor meetings, he seemed younger, the intensity in his eyes balanced by a rarely seen warmth. "Says the man who's also here at 9 p.m., she countered with a smile. Their working relationship had evolved, with surprising ease. After initial wariness, her expecting the demanding tyrant of business magazine profiles, him perhaps anticipating the rigid thinking of traditional finance, they'd discovered a shared language in patterns and possibilities. "Fair point." He entered, setting a paper bag on her desk. "But I brought reinforcements. The dumplings from that place on 8th. Fiona's stomach rumbled in response. She'd forgotten dinner again. "You remembered." Hard to forget someone praising. Dumplings with that level of poetic enthusiasm. He pulled up a chair. "Show me what's keeping you here so late." She turned her screen toward him. "I've been mapping the behavioral economics of the European market expansion. There's something off about the Milan projections." They fell into comfortable analysis, sharing the dumplings as they debated market forces and cultural variables. These impromptu evening sessions had become a pattern over the past weeks, Dominic appearing with food, Fiona sharing her latest insights, both of them losing track of time as they refined strategies for the expansion. The traditional models don't account for how quickly sentiment can shift in interconnected markets, Fiona explained, highlighting a section of her analysis. But if we integrate these response curves, we can anticipate the ripple effects, Dominic finished, his expression animated. "This is brilliant, Fiona." His use of her first name, something that had gradually replaced the formal Ms. Nichols, still caused a small flutter in her chest that she tried to ignore. Professional boundaries were essential, especially given the power differential between them. "There's something else," she said, changing course. "I've been reviewing Preston's implementation timeline, and it's unnecessarily conservative. We could accelerate by at least 6 weeks without additional risk." Dominic's expression shifted subtly. "Preston has concerns about moving too quickly." "Preston has concerns about my involvement, you mean?" Fiona said quietly. Since her arrival, the CFO had been politely obstructive, questioning her analyses in management meetings and excluding her from key discussions. Dominic sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of frustration. "Preston represents old guard thinking. He values credentials over capability." "I'm familiar with the type," Fiona said with a wry smile. "How do you handle it at Westbrook?" he asked, studying her with genuine curiosity. Fiona considered the question. "I let my work speak for itself. And when that doesn't work," she shrugged, "I accept that some doors remain closed." "That's remarkably pragmatic." "It's survival," she corrected. "When you grow up in Millfield, watching factories close and opportunities vanish, you learn the difference between battles worth fighting and those that drain your energy for nothing." Something in Dominic's expression shifted. "Millfield? The steel town?" Fiona nodded, surprised by his recognition of her hometown. "My father worked maintenance at the Millfield Steelworks for 20 years, he said quietly, before the conglomerate buyout and shutdown. The revelation hung between them, an unexpected connection transcending their professional relationship. "Eastern District?" she asked. "West End, near the old railroad junction." Fiona smiled. "We were on opposite sides of the tracks then, literally. East side, 2 blocks from Harrison Elementary. I went to Lincoln on the west side," Dominic said, a new warmth in his voice. "Our schools were rivals. The Wolves and the Eagles," Fiona recalled. "My father never missed a football game, even after working 12-hour shifts." Dominic leaned back in his chair. My mother cleaned houses in the East Side, the nice ones on Hilltop Drive. His expression grew distant. She'd bring home stories about those families, their vacations, their children's private schools, like fairy tales from another world. The personal disclosure surprised Fiona. Nothing in Dominic's public profile mentioned his working-class origins. The business press portrayed him as a technical genius who'd emerged fully formed into the startup ecosystem. "Is that why you keep your background out of the media?" she asked gently. His gaze returned to her, sharper now. "You notice that?" "I notice patterns," she reminded him, "including the absence of expected information." Dominic was silent for a moment. The technology world loves certain narratives: the college dropout genius, the garage inventor. The factory worker's son from a dying industrial town doesn't fit their preferred mythology, so you let them create their own story. I let them focus on what matters: the work, the innovation. He hesitated. "And I protect what's personal from becoming part of some manufactured rags-to-riches narrative." Fiona understood completely. She'd watched Westbrook executives appropriate others' hardship stories as evidence of their own meritocratic values, while continuing to favor those from privileged backgrounds. "Your secret's safe with me," she said lightly, trying to ease the sudden intensity between them. "Though it explains a lot about how you've structured the company." His eyebrow raised in question. The apprenticeship program for non-college grads. The investment in technical education in underserved communities. Fiona had researched these initiatives, impressed by their practical approach to expanding opportunity. "They're not charity or PR. They're pathways you wish had existed for people like us." The words "people like us" hung in the air, acknowledging a shared understanding that transcended their current positions. Dominic held her gaze. Most people see those programs as corporate social responsibility checkboxes. Most people didn't grow up watching an entire community lose its economic foundation overnight, Fiona replied, or understand how many brilliant minds never get the chance to develop because they're too busy surviving. Something shifted in the atmosphere between them. A boundary dissolving, a connection deepening beyond professional respect into something more complex. Dominic glanced at his watch, breaking the moment. "It's after 10. We should both get home." As they gathered their things, a comfortable silence settled between them. In the elevator descending to the lobby, Dominic asked, "Will you be at the strategy retreat this weekend?" Fiona nodded. "Josephine insisted I attend, though I'm not sure how Preston feels about it." "Preston doesn't determine who's essential to this company's future," Dominic said with unexpected firmness. "You are." The simple declaration warmed her more than it should have. Outside, the night air was cool and clear. Dominic's driver waited at the curb, but he hesitated before getting in. "How are you getting home?" "The Blue Line," she said, gesturing toward the subway entrance. "It's a straight shot to my neighborhood." He frowned. "At this hour? Let Richard drive you." "I've been taking late-night subways since college," she assured him. "I'll be fine." Dominic seemed about to argue, then caught himself. "Of course, I didn't mean to suggest—" He trailed off, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "That I can't handle myself?" Fiona finished with a smile. "Good night, Dominic. Thank you for the dumplings." As she walked toward the subway, she felt his gaze following her. She knew she should maintain clearer boundaries, should perhaps return to the formality of their early interactions. The warmth growing between them complicated everything: her temporary position, her professional reputation, her eventual return to Westbrook. Yet for the first time in her career, Fiona felt truly seen, not just for her analytical skills, but for the journey that had shaped her. And that recognition from someone who had walked a similar path was more valuable than she wanted to admit. The equation of worth. The corporate retreat center, nestled in the mountains 3 hours from the city, was the kind of place Fiona had only seen in luxury travel magazines. Stone pathways wound between elegant cabins, while the main lodge, with Its soaring ceilings and panoramic windows offered breathtaking views of the surrounding wilderness. Impressed? Josephine appeared beside her on the main lodge's terrace, where Reeves Technologies' executive team was gathering for the first evening of the strategic planning retreat. "It's beautiful," Fiona admitted, sipping her sparkling water. "Though I keep expecting someone to realize I don't belong here and ask for my staff badge." Josephine laughed. "Imposter syndrome doesn't discriminate based on talent, apparently." She nodded toward a group by the fire pit. "The technical directors are hoping you'll join them. They've been impressed by your integration projections." As Fiona made her way across the terrace, she felt a momentary unease at Preston's calculating gaze following her from where he stood with a group of financial advisors. Since her arrival at Reeves Technologies, the CFO had moved from dismissive to warily respectful, especially after Dominic had implemented several of her recommendations. The technical directors welcomed her warmly, immediately drawing her into a discussion about how the Milan expansion would impact their development timelines. Fiona found herself relaxing into the conversation, appreciating how this team valued input regardless of hierarchy. "The famous Fiona Nichols," came a voice from behind her. She turned to find a striking woman with elegant silver-streaked black hair extending her hand. "Vivian Reeves. I've heard remarkable things about you from my son." Fiona felt a flutter of surprise. Dominic's mother was not what she had expected based on their conversation about Millfield. Vivian carried herself with the polished confidence of someone long accustomed to moving in wealthy circles. "Mrs. Reeves, it's a pleasure to meet you," Fiona said, shaking her hand. "Vivian, please. I understand you're also from Millfield originally?" Her accent held just a trace of the regional inflection that surfaced in Dominic's speech when he was particularly tired or passionate. "Yes, East Side," Fiona confirmed. Vivian's eyes sparkled with recognition. "I cleaned houses in that neighborhood for years. The Hendersons on Maple, the Carters on Hilltop Drive." "My mother was friends with Mrs. Carter's housekeeper," Fiona said, the connection surprising her. "She used to watch me after school sometimes when Mom picked up extra shifts." "Small world," Vivian said warmly. "Dominic tells me you've revolutionized their approach to the European expansion." Before Fiona could respond, a subtle shift in the energy of the gathering announced Dominic's arrival. He moved through the crowd with easy confidence, stopping to speak briefly with various team members before approaching them. "I see you've met my mother," he said, his expression softening as he looked between them. "We're discovering our Millfield connections," Vivian explained. "I was about to tell Fiona how proud I am of what you've created here." Dominic's expression held a complexity Fiona couldn't quite decipher. "Everything good in my life came from your example, Mom." The genuine emotion in his voice revealed a depth to their relationship that touched Fiona unexpectedly. Vivian patted his cheek affectionately. "And now I'll find Eleanor from HR. She promised to show me photos of her new grandbaby." With a warm smile at Fiona, she moved away, leaving them alone. "Your mother is lovely," Fiona said. "Not at all what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who reflected more of your intensity." Dominic smiled. "My intensity came from watching her work 3 jobs after my father died, still managing to make our apartment feel like a home." He glanced around the luxurious retreat. "All this, the company, the success, it was always about making sure she never had to clean another house or worry about a utility bill again." The personal admission created an intimate bubble around them despite the crowded terrace. "She seems remarkably at ease here," Fiona observed. "She adapts to any environment," Dominic said with pride. "A skill she developed moving between mansions, on Hilltop Drive and our apartment near the railroad tracks. She taught me that worth isn't determined by your address or account balance." Fiona felt a sudden pang. "A lesson I'm still learning, apparently." His gaze sharpened. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then decided on honesty. I still feel like an outsider in spaces like this. Like someone will suddenly realize I don't have the right pedigree to be here. Yet you handle yourself with perfect confidence in strategy meetings. Professional confidence is different, she explained. I know my work is valuable. It's the social aspects, knowing which fork to use at dinner, recognizing the right references, not betraying my background. With the wrong word choice that remind me I wasn't born to this world. Understanding flickered in his eyes. The constant calculation of how to present yourself, the exhaustion of vigilance. Exactly. Relief washed through her at being understood without explanation. Come with me, he said suddenly. There's something I want to show you. Curious, Fiona followed him away from the gathering, down a path that led through a grove of towering pines to a clearing overlooking the valley below. The sun was setting, painting the landscape in dramatic golds and purples. This is breathtaking, she said softly. I bought this retreat center 3 years ago, Dominic said, surprising her. It was failing financially, despite its location. Do you know why? Fiona shook her head. The previous owners catered exclusively to old money executives who valued exclusivity over innovation. They created a beautiful prison of social expectations where actual productivity was secondary to maintaining hierarchies. He turned to face her fully. I transformed it into a place where ideas matter more than backgrounds, where someone like you would be valued for your mind rather than marginalized for your origins. The intensity of his gaze made her heart race. Is that why you brought me onto this project? Because we share similar backgrounds? I brought you onto this project because you see patterns others miss, he said firmly. Your background isn't qualification or disqualification, it's context that shaped your unique perspective. A cool breeze swept through the clearing, causing Fiona to shiver slightly in her light blazer. Without hesitation, Dominic removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. Thank you, she said, momentarily flustered by the gesture and the subtle scent of his cologne now surrounding her. The company retreat coincides with something else, he said, changing subjects. Today marks 5 years since our first major product launch, the one that put Reeves Technologies on the map. That's worth celebrating, Fiona said warmly. What no one knows is that we were 3 days from bankruptcy when that launch succeeded. His expression grew distant with memory. Every bank had rejected our loan applications. Every venture capital firm had passed. We were interesting but unproven. According to their assessment letters, Fiona could hear the echoes of old wounds in his voice. Yet you persisted. I mortgaged everything, borrowed from friends, maxed out credit cards. Not because I was brave, but because I couldn't face telling my mother that I'd failed, that, after all her sacrifices to put me through college, I couldn't make something of myself. The vulnerability in his admission touched her deeply. But you succeeded. We succeeded, he corrected, a team of brilliant people whom others had underestimated. He looked at her intently. That's why your work on this expansion matters so much, Fiona. You understand what's at stake beyond profit margins. You see the human impact of creating opportunity. The use of her first name, spoken with such conviction, created a tremor of emotion she couldn't suppress. The professional boundary she'd tried to maintain felt increasingly tenuous. Dominic, she began, uncertain what she intended to say. Before she could continue, Preston's voice interrupted from the path behind them. There you are. The investors are asking for you, Dom. Dominic's expression closed slightly as he turned. We'll be right there. Preston's gaze moved between them, noting Dominic's jacket around Fiona's shoulders with barely concealed disapproval. The board members specifically requested your insight on the European market forecasts. Then they'll want to hear from Ms. Nichols as well, Dominic replied coolly. She developed the forecasting model. Preston's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, though perhaps some of the more technical aspects might be better coming from our permanent executive team. The implication was clear. Fiona was temporary, an outsider, not part of the real leadership. Ms. Nichols will present her own work, Dominic said, his tone brooking no argument. Her secondment may be temporary, but her contribution to this company won't be. The statement hung in the air between them. Preston nodded stiffly and retreated, back toward the lodge. "What did you mean by that?" Fiona asked when they were alone again. "About my contribution not being temporary." Dominic met her gaze directly. "I'm planning to offer you a permanent position, Director of Strategic Finance. You'd report directly to me, not to Preston." The unexpected offer left her momentarily speechless. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to decide now," he assured her. "But I want you to know that your value to this company isn't in question. Not to me." As they walked back toward the lodge, Fiona felt a complex mixture of emotions. The professional recognition was everything she'd worked for, a position where her abilities would be valued without constant undermining, yet she couldn't ignore the growing personal connection between them or how it might complicate such a role. What had begun as a 3-month secondment had evolved into something far more significant, a potential turning point in her career and perhaps in her life. The question now was whether she was ready to fully step into this new world with all its opportunities and complications. Ledgers of the Heart, the annual Millfield High School reunion, occupied the same community center hall it had for the past 15 years. Faded blue and gold streamers, the school colors, hung alongside a banner welcoming the graduating class. Through the windows, Fiona could see the silhouette of the shuttered steel mill that had once been the town's economic center. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Dominic asked as they sat in his car outside the venue. "We could still drive back to the city." Fiona smoothed the skirt of her simple but elegant dress, a far cry from the department store clearance rack outfits she'd worn to previous reunions. "I'm sure. Millfield is part of who I am, who we both are." 6 months had passed since the retreat. Fiona had accepted the position at Reeves Technologies, and the European expansion was exceeding even their optimistic projections. Her financial modeling approach had been profiled in the Wall Street Journal, bringing professional recognition she'd never imagined possible. But tonight wasn't about professional accomplishments. It was about coming full circle. "Ready?" Dominic reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers with familiar warmth. Inside, the reunion was in full swing. Former classmates clustered in groups that largely mirrored their high school social hierarchies, despite the passing years. Fiona felt the familiar flutter of anxiety as heads turned toward them, conversations pausing as recognition dawned. "Fiona Nichols?" Jessica Palmer approached, her expression a mixture of surprise and calculation. As head cheerleader and daughter of the town's most prominent doctor, she'd been the unofficial queen of Millfield High. "It's been ages." "Hello, Jessica," Fiona replied warmly, refusing to match the other woman's artificial enthusiasm. "Nice to see you again." Jessica's gaze shifted to Dominic, recognition flickering in her eyes. "And you brought... Is that Dominic Reeves? The tech mogul?" Before Fiona could respond, Dominic extended his hand. "Jessica, right? Fiona's mentioned you." The subtle emphasis on Fiona's name wasn't lost on Jessica, whose expression cycled through confusion, reassessment, and finally a plastered-on smile. "Well, this is a surprise. Fiona, you've been keeping secrets. How did you two meet?" "Professionally, initially," Fiona said simply. Dominic needed someone who understood both advanced financial modeling and the values of places like Millfield. "Oh. So you work for him?" Jessica's relief at finding a familiar hierarchy was palpable. "With me," Dominic corrected gently. "Fiona's pioneering our approach to international market integration. The Milan expansion that's been in the business news. That's her vision." Jessica's smile froze slightly. "How nice. Excuse me, I see the Williamson twins just arrived." As she retreated, Dominic squeezed Fiona's hand. "You okay?" "Better than okay," Fiona replied honestly. "I used to dread these reunions, the subtle reminders that no matter what I achieved, I'd always be judged by where I started. And now?" She smiled up at him. "Now I understand that where I started gave me strengths I couldn't have gained any other way. I don't need their validation anymore." They moved through the room, greeting former classmates. Some were genuinely warm, others barely concealed their calculation as they connected Fiona with the billionaire entrepreneur whose face occasionally appeared on business magazine covers. Dominic remained steadfastly by her side, his hand often, finding the small of her back in a gesture of support and connection. "Fiona Nichols as I live and breathe." The booming voice belonged to her former economics teacher, Mr. Brennan, now retired but still sporting his trademark bow tie. His genuine delight at seeing her was a balm after so many manufactured reactions. "Mr. Brennan!" Fiona embraced him, warmly. "You haven't changed a bit." "Can't say the same for you," he said, his eyes twinkling. "You've blossomed. I always knew you would." He extended his hand to Dominic. "And Dominic Reeves. I taught at Lincoln High for a few years before, transferring to Millfield. You probably don't remember me. I covered Mrs. Hernandez's math class during her maternity leave. Senior year, advanced calculus," Dominic said, shaking his hand with genuine respect. "You encouraged me to apply for that university scholarship when I was convinced it was a waste of time." Mr. Brennan beamed. "I remember that brilliant mind of yours, and now look at you two, Millfield's finest, changing the world together." His unaffected pride in them both touched Fiona deeply. "Actually," she said, making a decision, "we have something we'd like you to be the first to know, Mr. Brennan, given the role you played in both our journeys." Dominic looked at her questioningly, then understanding dawned in his eyes. With a slight nod, he reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small box. Mr. Brennan's eyes widened. "Is that what I think it is? I was planning to wait until our walk by the old mill later tonight," Dominic said, his voice suddenly tender. "But this feels right." He opened the box to reveal a ring with a simple but stunning emerald set in platinum. "No diamond," he explained to Mr. Brennan. Fiona once mentioned that her grandmother had an emerald ring she loved as a child, her one memory of something truly beautiful in their home. The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought tears to Fiona's eyes. Their relationship had developed gradually after she accepted the position at Reeves Technologies, careful at first, both mindful of maintaining professional boundaries while exploring their deepening personal connection. "Well, don't keep an old teacher in suspense," Mr. Brennan said, his voice thick with emotion. "Make it official." Dominic took Fiona's hand. "We've walked similar paths from different sides of the same town. We both know the value of work, of perseverance, of creating something meaningful from limited beginnings." His voice, usually so confident in boardrooms, held a new vulnerability. "You've become essential to me, Fiona. Not just your brilliant mind, but your compassion, your integrity, your quiet strength. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes." As Dominic slipped the ring onto her finger, Mr. Brennan applauded, drawing the attention of nearby classmates. Word spread quickly through the reunion, creating a ripple of reactions ranging from genuine congratulations to poorly concealed calculation. Jessica reappeared with remarkable speed. "Oh my God, you're engaged! To Dominic Reeves?" Her voice carried just enough to ensure others would hear. "Who would have ever thought our Fiona would end up with, well, someone like you?" she finished, addressing Dominic directly. The implied surprise that Fiona could attract someone successful might once have stung. Now it merely highlighted how little Jessica understood about true worth. "I'm the fortunate one," Dominic replied smoothly. "Fiona saw me for who I am beyond any success or status. That's remarkably rare in my experience." The subtle rebuke wasn't lost on Jessica, whose smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Later, as they slipped away from the increasingly curious crowd, Dominic led Fiona along the river path toward the old steel mill. In the moonlight, even the abandoned industrial complex held a certain haunting beauty. "Any regrets?" he asked as they stood looking out over the water. "About saying yes in front of everyone? I know you value your privacy." Fiona considered the question seriously. "No regrets. There's something powerful about acknowledging our journey in the place where it began, even if our paths didn't cross until later." "I've been thinking about that," Dominic said, his arm around her shoulders. "About parallel journeys and timing. If we'd met in Millfield as teenagers, I'm not sure we would have connected this way." "We were different people then," Fiona agreed. "We needed to forge our own paths first, to discover our strengths independently." "And now?" His voice was gentle in the darkness. "Now we choose to walk forward together, not because we need each other to be complete, but because we recognize and value who we've each become." Dominic turned to face her, the moonlight illuminating his features. "There's something else I've been considering. A foundation to support education and entrepreneurship in towns like Millfield, places with talent and potential, but limited opportunities." The idea resonated deeply with Fiona. A way to create pathways for others. Exactly. Not charity, but investment in people who just need a chance to prove their worth. His expression grew serious. "Would you help me design it? It needs your financial insight, but more importantly, your understanding of what truly makes a difference in communities like this." The request touched her. Not just the professional recognition, but his understanding of how much Millfield and places like it still mattered to her. "I'd be honored," she said. "We could start with scholarships, but also apprenticeship programs, business incubators." As they walked back toward the reunion, ideas flowing between them, Fiona felt a profound sense of coming full circle. The girl who had once been dismissed as a nobody from the wrong side of the tracks had found not just professional success or even personal happiness, but a partnership that honored her journey and expanded her capacity to create meaningful change. The ledger of her life now balanced in ways she couldn't have imagined, not through erasing her past or denying her origins, but by recognizing how they had shaped her into someone of true value, someone who could now help rewrite the equations of opportunity for others. Inside the community center, the reunion continued, a tableau of small-town dynamics and remembered hierarchies that once seemed so important. But as Fiona and Dominic rejoined the gathering, hands linked and future bright with possibility, she understood that the most meaningful validation had never been about impressing those who had once dismissed her. It had been about becoming someone who no longer needed that validation at all.